a panel discussion with the industry experts who will share their opinions on technology and the new world order. Let me give you a short introduction of our panelists. We have James Law, founder, chairman, and CEO. James Law, Cybertecture Architects, CEO, and co-founder, HomeD Hong Kong. Mr. Law is an architect, technologist, and entrepreneur, renowned for creating his philosophy of cybertecture, in which a better world is designed with technology to alleviate suffering for mankind. His company's projects cover buildings, spaces, technologies, education, and social design. Thank you, sir, for being a part of the summit, both as a speaker and as an advisory board member. Next, we have Sandeep Shikre, President, CEO, Sandeep Shikre and Associates, also known as SSA Architects, Mumbai. Shikre runs SSA with a team of 275 plus young, dedicated, committed professionals that render architectural, interior design, and construction management consultancy services. He is the founding member of IGBC and also chairman of IGBC Mumbai chapter. He is a patron of CTBUH and is on advisory committees for several forums. Sandeep sir is also a part of the ADM Summit advisory board. It's a pleasure to have you on board, sir. Next, we have Britta Knobel Gupta, founding partner, Studio Symbiosis, Stuttgart and Delhi. In 2006, Britta joined Zaha Hadid Architects and was involved as lead architect. She has been awarded the Newcomer Award in 2002, the prestigious 40 Under 40 Europe 2014, and many more. Next, we have Pravinsinh Solanki, Associate Senior Faculty, Furniture and Interior Design, Head at NID Skill Development Labs, Ahmedabad. Mr. Solanki is an industrial designer with 16 years of experience working in India and Italy. He has received many national and international awards for his innovative bamboo products. Few of his works are on permanent display in the World Bamboo Museum, well curated, published in magazines, newspapers, and television. He offers sustainable workshops, is a jury member for various competitions, and is also a TEDx speaker. This session will be moderated by Sujit Nair, founder, principal architect, SDeG, Bengaluru. SDeG has won several awards and was in 2012 given the opportunity to exhibit at the Venice Architect Biennale. The firm was also featured on CNBC's Young Turks in 2013, a show known to recognize emerging entrepreneurs. Mr. Sujit started his professional career at Zaha Hadid Architects, London. He has been active in architectural education as a visiting design critic and has lectured at forums, design schools, and public events. We thank all our speakers for being a part of this summit. Request you to take it ahead from here, Mr. Sujit. Request all speakers to turn on their cameras and unmute themselves.
Sujit, you will have to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Tech issues. Thank you for those introductions, and a big thanks to the organizers, Animation Express, Anil and team, for taking the initiative to set up this platform for dialogue and conversation, and Apurva for reaching out and even pushing me to get organized much sooner than I would have otherwise, I think. So thanks for that. I'm really pleased to be here today in really good company, and I hope to draw some interesting insights from 4 seasoned, established practitioners, all doing completely different things. I think that's fascinating. I want to start by, quoting each one of you. I was doing some background work. Stalking technology allows me to do that, maybe a little bit. You said in one of your interviews that design is a relation that you share with the material in hand, and I found that a terrific thing to say. Britta, on your website, I was looking up maybe your manifesto, if you want to put it like that, that the practice believes that with computational tools, it is possible to create elegant design solutions driven by performance. Sandeep, I found this interesting and sort of more humanist sort of line in one of your interviews on YouTube. I was looking at this. You said, I think the question to you was, what inspires you? And you said it's community building and interactions between people. And I think that's interesting considering the scale of work you do. James, I think this has already been said amongst the many things you've said already. I think that architecture can be the technology that alleviates the suffering of mankind. And as such, if that means I need to make buildings that fly and buildings that save lives, buildings that are kind and compassionate, then that's what I'll do. So it's on these thoughts from the speakers that I'd like to build on today's topic, which is really the role of technology in design practice and maybe a little bit of our futures. And somehow this conversation is a lot more relevant and pressing now, I think, given what's happened in the past 20 months. So I'd like to start my sort of questions with Sandeep first. I think we all agree that we've had to revisit and adapt to different ways of using technology the past year. And I wanted to know from you, Sandeep, could you tell us how quickly you were able to adapt using maybe collaborative tools and technologies that we were not really acquainted with so much in the past, and how you were managing your work and business, at a sort of slightly constrained and difficult time? Is there something that you can share with us on that?
Yeah. So firstly, let me compliment the morning session, which was amongst Naresh and Ansi. It was quite informative, very nice. I enjoyed every bit of it, and I think it has set a very good tone for our session now. Yeah, technology is an enabler, as Naresh very correctly said. And being an architect and designer, you have to be very mindful and very judicious when you adapt a technology. Now, when you adapt a technology, you have opportunities when you develop a design in your office. So the entire design development process, how do you make it more efficient? How do you make it more analytical? How do you make it more research-based? Then you adapt a construction technology, which is used for developing a built environment. And there are several aspects that influences your thoughts for choosing the construction technology. You may go with the very sustainable local contextual technology when you are working in a particular type of area. But being from an urban megapolis, we have been always pushed to meet the desired targets of a rapid urbanization. And we have to balance the wheel by using an appropriate technology which is not having any adverse impact on environment. I think that is something which is top on our priority. We spoke about the carbon neutral intensification and the future going towards a carbon neutral. And third thing is, what is technology doing in the built environment that you have built? So if you put them into these 3 baskets, I think your decision-making process will be much simpler. So adaptability of this technology in current times is I think it's a constant kind of a quest that all of us as an architect will have to adapt, because there are some paradigm shifts due to pandemic and several other climate change responses, and also a rapid urbanization. So it is a practice that not only me, I guess everyone follows, to keep ourselves ahead of the time, to understand what are the several researchers and the people who influence the people-centric architecture are developing. And we need to have a mechanism to adapt that in our architecture. For example, when we were talking about work from home culture, we're talking about post-pandemic touchless gadgetries, and actual influence of these particular impact on the mental health of the people. So there have been several researches from each discipline been done. Like ASHRAE came up with the new guidelines, which is very important for all large size mixed use development complexes and so on. And I'm anticipating that very soon there will be a revision and upgradation in all codal requirements. So architect, while focusing on design, has to be very, very conscious about all of these things which are happening around us. And like we also being architect, we are always mindful. We have a dedicated cell in our office who does a continuous research and analysis about these emerging technologies, emerging trends, and we do our own analysis in terms of its pros and cons, which is relevant for which kind of projects, and that's how we move ahead.
And the cell that you're talking about is something that sort of emerged in the last 18 months, 20 months, or something that's an ongoing thing you've been doing for a while, or?
No, we always had this cell with us since last almost 1 decade. So whenever any project walks in, the design team will sit with this cell. They have a design charrette. There's a detailed workshop that takes place, and this cell will provide them all required analysis, researches, and the relevant data that is required. So it becomes a very cohesive and collaborative process right from the inception of the project.
Okay, that's interesting. And to you, Britta, have events in the past year had a bearing on the way you think about concept, think about the processes in the office, the way you sort of are you using any new tools? Is there a new way you interact with your clients? Is there something that you're doing completely different, and perhaps that's the way that you'll move forward now?
Yes, definitely. We, like Sandeep just said, it's all about adaptation. So we really believe adaptability is the key to evolution. So during this pandemic, this evolution was springboarded by using digital tools and technique. I mean, luckily, because we're an international office, we were already on the cloud, so everything was cloud-based. But still, overnight, we had to switch for the whole office, be able to work from the server, right, and also from the office computers, but sitting at home. And right, this, of course, in a certain extent, it will continue. There will always be a certain percentage working from home. But also we realize, being in design field, it's very important to create a synergy of ideas. And so we realize the best is still face-to-face, face-to-face brainstorm and face-to-face coming up with ideas. Yeah. And yeah, the new normal, definitely, luckily it's less traveling. No? So this is and also it's good for environment, less traveling.
Yeah, and how have your clients received this new way of working, and have you been able to convey your ideas and sort of projects across effectively? Has that been successful, or that's work in progress?
Yes, I mean, we are doing more meetings online than before, and it's also working. It's also quite effective, actually, because the meeting is then much shorter. Now you don't have to fly and arrive early and everything. So it's actually much more time effective and sustainable.
It's interesting that you said that you still prefer the physical interaction and face-to-face interactions that's most successful. And that's why I want to ask Praveen this question is, I suppose it's fair to assume that you have a more hands-on approach to your work, and it the last, especially during lockdown, etc., did that pose serious constraints on the way you worked? And did it sort of create trouble with the people that you were interacting with for manufacturing and craft, etc.?
So hi everyone. So it's a very interesting question, and I call it as a translocated location working. So during pandemic, I was with my brother, and he has a resort in Sasangir, right? So I was we were 16 people in the whole resort, lush green, and you can hear the sound of lions and everything. But I think I worked more than 12 hours because I was getting fresh oxygen, and I have not limited myself. I thought that it is an opportunity to think more. So I used to sketch. So I used to read in newspaper or on news that yes, there are a lot of beds required in this area in Jharkhand and all that. So quickly, I used to make sketches. Whatever material I had in my resort, we made quickly some, what do you say, prototype of beds. And immediately we made sketches with dimension, everything, and sent it to Rajiv Shetty, right? He's Padma Shri, he's sitting in Delhi, working with a lot of craftsmen in Jharkhand. So it was an opportunity, we grabbed it. In Maharashtra, we sent that. We created a lot of mask, face mask out of bamboo. So it was not cost effective, because by the time government reaches to these people with a mask, and because it was like sudden requirement, so it was not ready. So taking the craft forward, we took it, make it design. I made a lot of sketches, made like small prototype, whatever material available, and send it to the craftsmen immediately, maybe in Jharkhand, maybe in Northeast, something in Maharashtra. And all the people positively have, craftsmen has taken it, yes, Praveen, we will make it. So they also had limitation of sourcing, because whatever material they had with them, they made it. The best was craftsmen were available because they were sitting home ideally. And this really lifted up their motto, ke nahi yaar, maza aa gaya, Praveen. You have given us a work during the time when everybody is sitting, not doing anything. At the same time, we created like big social distancing hats. So I made a sketch, sent it to Mizoram craftsmen. I put my own money. Okay, don't worry about the money part. We will give you money, but you're making hats out of cane. Let's try bamboo, because this is available to you. Just make it. So we got beautiful bamboo hats, which was not there, right? It is like 3 feet. And I was wearing in the airports and everything during pandemic, and people were, oh my God, crazy. Are you from India? Are you from Northeast? So how do you take an opportunity and grab it and give to the right, because the craftsmen were not having anything during that time. So we made beds, we made masks, we made the biggest cap, right, for social distancing. So for me, it was a translocated working, and I was more in touch with craftsmen during that time.
Right. No, it's interesting that you sort of use that time to almost, I think, rethink and sort of find an opportunity within those constraints, and you found new ways to communicate with your team. And, you know, that's, I think it's a terrific tale of resilience, I think. But James, I know you've always found fairly successful ways to keep work going, and you sort of, you know, are involved in multiple things. But, you know, just before that, I'm just an observation, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. I sort of sense that maybe you've used this time to venture out a bit and explore different territories. Is that a sort of safe assumption to make?
Yeah, you're perfectly right. You've done all of the right research. Yeah. I think this has been a crazy time. And I think being an architect in this era begs the question about, you know, what we are about, and if we're running a business, if we're running a practice, what is our business model, what do we provide, etc., etc. All the avenues seems to be under really rapid change. And so during this period, I've really ventured out into, you know, taking Cybertecture from the kind of relatively controlled environment of being a practice to providing online education, to now dealing with the metaverse and crypto, and then also providing and sharing knowledge about affordable housing and using new modular designs that can help people around the world build their own modular housing. And much of that has been driven, I think, by, you know, a combination of, you know, wanting to obviously survive this period, but also that I think in every adversity we are forced to, you know, look at new potentials, and perhaps rather from seeing the current situation negatively is to see it more positively, and to venture out and try to find the new horizons that hopefully could give us the potentials to thrive and to be more creative and to be more impactful. So that's what we've been doing as much as we can.
No, I find it interesting that you sort of broaden the spectrum of work even more, I think, in some sense within the practice, and how sort of tech can influence other spheres as well. It's almost as though you started as a designer, as an architect, and you perfected some techniques within the office, and then sort of you take that forward into other spheres. And I think that's interesting, and it's those processes that I want to bring up in my in my next question, which I want to ask Britta. And it's really around this idea of technology in practice and in design. Let's sort of, make a base assumption that, design technologies fall broadly under 3 categories. Let's say, experimental tools for ideation, generative software and so on. And then there are tools for managing efficiencies and production processes and so on. Then there's, of course, construction technologies and site processes and machinery and equipment and so on. Which of these aspects sort of interest you the most? And really, is there a focus on any one of these specifically, or you figured out a narrative to cut across all 3 stages in some way?
I think for us, it's not either or, since design is going through various phases. So it's really a journey. Design is a journey using digital tools, which we go through from generative software in concept design and all the way to prototyping, execution, optimization. We use it a lot for optimization. So which tech option interests me most? Definitely it's generative software, because that's where the idea is created, somehow the seed, which drives the project. So, and then it's transformed into design using iterative processes, design techniques. And it's to create an elegant dialogue between the parameters of design and design itself.
Yes, and you talk about performance. I know
Yes.
that's a word that you use a lot with your work and outcomes. Is there something that you can talk about a little bit more? What does performance really mean? What is performative design and architecture? What does that really imply?
So we really use the software and the techniques to increase the performance. Let's say, call it sun shading, call it wind rack. We also recently developed an air purification tower where we are using airflow. So it's different systems, let's say, for each project. But
Right.
we are really using performance in a sustainable way and using these techniques to create it with iterations, with parameters, let's say.
Right. Okay. And is that something to do that? Are you trying to control? Is it just aesthetics, or is it about the materiality, or is it about the way it's built? I mean, how do you make those decisions? Is there a sort of method that you follow for that?
Okay, let's say a Punjab case, we headquarter which we designed long time ago, but now we're executing it on site. So there we really, in the north, we have it more open. East, it's getting more closed, and then south even more closed, and west is then again similar to east, and north is open again. So this transition came purely from computational techniques and simulations. So we simulated it almost for 2 weeks in the office to get these percentages of sun shading, to get less heat into it, and also not too much lux level. So this was one good example where performance really is driving the project.
Right, and it's the tools that you use that really allow you to create those iterations and then sort of, identify the most optimal one, which you then carry forward into production and so on.
Exactly.
I just want to carry that forward to James. I know you've been working with digital tools for a long time, and that's really sort of the premise around, or for your work. I want to know if you're working new at the moment. Are there any new methods that you're following in any of these sort of stages, or the life of a project from its inception to its sort of eventuality? And or are you doing new forms of research in the office, for example?
Yeah, Sujit, I think the biggest change in our office has been because of the pandemic and because of the inability for us to travel and to meet clients, etc. We have actually brought them to the table digitally. So what we are really doing now with all of our projects is they all exist on a digital whiteboard. So clients, consultants, us, everybody is on that whiteboard. And for the first time, everything from the research to the sketches, to the models, to the animations, everything is on that whiteboard, transparent to the whole community. I think in the old days, we used to curate a little bit and show progress in the way that we wanted to do it. But now we do it immediately on a completely transparent technological level. And that has yielded I think a much better way for us to work as a practice, because what happens is we are co-creating a lot more with our clients, with our customers, with our partners, etc., in a very transparent way. It is almost like anybody can mark up something and anybody can add to that whiteboard and anybody can take things away or anybody can reframe the issues all at the same time. And whereas in the old days, in the kind of much more kind of literal, rational world, we had to be much more rational. We had to be, step by step, concept to schematic, schematic to detail. Now it's almost like, throw it all in. And I think that's been probably the biggest area of change or research for us in terms of how we work. Other aspects, I think, are very much about the research into us as a company. We really feel that at the heart of everything, the biggest project that we're doing, the biggest innovation that we have to do is ourselves, right? It's not any particular project. That's just an outcome of our fundamental innovations. So how we relate to each other, how do we organize ourselves? What are our roles in the office? So, we're getting really kind of interesting, we're taking away the title of architect away from people now, and we're calling them cybertechs, because we're saying that, okay, well, sometimes you're not going to be making an architectural drawing, but you might be, writing up a paper or doing research or doing some coding, etc. But all of us are architects and all of us are cybertechs, and we're all kind of rolled in together. So I think a kind of compression of everything in the traditional process, but also transparent in a certain way, using these new applications and platforms that are available to companies to use. That has really made us change a lot.
And what you're also saying is that with the whiteboard, it's collaborative not only within the office, it's collaborative with your clientele as well.
Absolutely, that's the key. Yeah, Sujit, that's the key. Yeah. It's open to our clients. It's open, and we're always on there live, right? So they can see who has shifted what, who's added what. Even government authorities sometimes are invited onto that as well. So they can see that, okay, you're trying to do something that's slightly against the rules. Okay, well, hang on, we can't let you do that. So, so everything is in the mix. And I think digital technology and new workflows based on these apps allows us to all be in that mix, rather than traditional kind of, okay, we get it to that stage, we share it with them, get it to that stage, we share it with them. So that's what we really benefited from.
And I want to touch on another aspect of the digital, especially on the sort of construction side. My questions for Praveen, and in terms of manufacturing, and I find your work most interesting in that context, since that there's an element of repetition, right? You are essentially it's, I think, fair to assume that you are interested in the manufacturing side and mass producing, in some sense, using specific materials. And how do you see tech play a role for you? What is that process that you follow from innovation and creativity to final execution? Where does the sort of tech come in that journey?
See, when I came back from Italy, and when I look into the Indian craft, then I realized, and especially into the bamboo craft, I thought that people were not working. There were very less designers working on contemporary craft onto bamboo. So that was an opportunity for me, because less people buy craft here, right? Because our craft has somewhere a lot of issues. We are very rich in tradition, but when we talk about the quality and what the world is looking for globally, we are not able to cater. I'm talking about only the bamboo part, not even the weaving part. So that made me think that how can I go to a next level where it has a global market? Because coming from Italy, what we learned was minimalism. How do you use technology in such a way that you get quality, you get the best of the design, you get the best finish, because everybody wants to touch, want to feel. But if you see, our craft has the same problem, that if you touch, aesthetics has a problem, the touching part, the dimension. You can have a beautiful hat from Northeast, but it will not fit to your hat, to your head. So then I thought, why not take use of technology? So whatever machines I used to make for making furniture, slowly I brought bamboos and I started whatever ideas I had in my head, I started making myself. So bamboo taught me that if you cut this way, this is possible. If you cut this way, there is a possibility. And that was the success story. My idea, then using technology, and the way I will put into 3 words, that it is about your creativity, about your manual skills, and technology. And these 3 things created my success story. If you see my hangers, they are so simple. Everybody can, oh yes, you can make it. But why people have not thought? Because everybody was thinking, okay, usko, you can only cut with a bend saw or some saw. But then I thought, why not take machines, and it give me really good finishing. So once I cut it, I don't have to again go back and sand and do so many things. So technology helped for expressions, customization, it helped for exploration, it helped for production, and at the same time, it helped for promotion also. So that advantage I took of technology.
Yeah, no, and I do think when, tech allows greater access to, design for a larger cross section, because you're working with completely different kinds of people. I think then there's a sense of validation there of, the way we use technology, the way you use technology specifically. And it's in that sort of context that I want to ask Sandeep is, do you think that technology can truly sort of address deficiencies, in the urban context? And I want to bring this up in light of, since we're talking about people and it's sort of technology for people. And maybe do you think that it will create a better access for example, services, or is it more about the aesthetics? What is your sort of take on that? Where do we prioritize for our cities? Is it aesthetics, or is it utility, or is it a combination of both? Is there a way to do both, you think?
Very good question. So before directly coming to your question, Sujit, let me take 1 minute to address, as you have asked about these various opportunities an architect has, and James has very well explained, it also explained very well, a cloud-based server, a whiteboard, to have everybody on one page. That's the biggest challenge architect faces. Okay. So a tool like Iconics, which you use for communication, and something that is very brilliant, which is available today, is a Revit, which is compatible with Beam. So when you do a large, high density, high rise, complex development, you cannot rely only on the conventional documentation. You need to have a virtual tool where there is a Revit model done on 3OD, LOD 360, which is migrating to LOD 500. So you have a clash detected model, which is then taken for a costing in a 4D, taken for scheduling in a 5D, taken for sustainability in a 6D. And the same model then goes to GC, and GC puts in the as-built drawing and goes to the facility manager as a 7D. So it's a one intelligent tool that becomes incremental, and such large complexes, it becomes very easy throughout the life cycle of that built environment for a facility manager to maintain, operate, and upgrade. That's something which is amazing. You cannot do it with the conventional style of 4 million square foot or 6 million square foot of a mixed use complex. And I personally reckon that after 4 or 5 years, the conventional style of giving a good for construction drawing will go away. All the architects just give a virtual encrypted model to a GC, and that encrypted model will then follow for the construction methodologies. That's where the technology is actually helping us to be more efficient, more accurate. Of course, when you use this is very much relevant to an urban context. So again, I would say architecture is not generic. It is very case specific. When you are doing an institutional project, when you are doing a project in a tier 2 city or in a rural area, the entire requirement of a people who would be occupying your premises is different. So your question is very, very nice. You have to have a proper mindful approach to balance the way. If you try to adopt some technology which is not relevant in a particular contextual area, then it will fail. You have to respect the context and then come out with a solution. So there's a coexistence. There is no one solution. There's a coexistence of your applicability. And that's why architect needs to spend a lot of time to understand the client. understand the behavior of whatever the built environment they will do. And then I think you can do a nice combination of the technology that is available for you to evolve design, even for construction. I mean, you can't build a 300 meter, 400 meter building with a conventional style. You have to have a jump form construction methodology. You have to have an off-site prefabricated assembling methodology, without which this will just not get done. Right. So every applicability has its own space. An architect has to be very knowledgeable. Of course, it's a collaborative approach where we have such wonderful stalwarts working with us, our structural consultants, MEP consultants, our environmental consultants, and so on. So if you use that thing judiciously, you will come out with the best solution. There is no generic solution. You can maintain a good humanity. You can have a wonderful lifestyle, even in a different kind of a high density complexes. At the same time, you can maintain the very humble, low rise, mid rise developments which are relevant in those particular areas.
And I know that you're involved, with the IGBC. What are they saying out there? What is the sort of, especially in, for our cities and in sort of urban context, is there a kind of conscious, is there any sort of conscious work being done to propagate interesting technologies or interesting processes? That's something that we can that can work for our cities and our immediate context. Is there something that you're involved in as initiatives and so on? Yeah, again, a good question. See, I mean, all the forums, so World Green Building Council has 70 forums, and all of them are striving for the same goal. Like you see that less is more, that was taught in the morning session. You have to make sure that whatever you are doing, is it optimum? Are you overbuilding and then trying to make it sustainable? That doesn't make any sense. So this entire net zero mission, may it be net zero energy, net zero water, net zero waste, and we are talking about the carbon neutral. You have to first focus on optimization of what you are going to build. Renovation, adaptive reuse, repurpose, refurbish is the key. So at all these forums, that is the awareness which we are trying to advocate, that just don't build. Make sure that what you're building is absolutely required. Do you have an opportunity to repurpose any of the earlier built environment there and make it nice, retrofit, restoration, and so on. So there are, of course, technologies. Now we spoke about a GHG emission. How do you scale the GHG emission? And what is a COP COP26 mission? So the forum is giving a lot of research analysis, which is available on the website. There's an open source research portal where all the young minds have been motivated to come and do an open source research, because every time you do a research and you cannot have it inclusive. So these are some inclusive kind of an attempts we are trying to do so that people understand within them, and then the mission will become viral on its own. That's how the process. I find it interesting that you use the word inclusive, and I think as designers, I think Naresh mentioned it in the earlier session today, that I think we have a tendency to work exclusively in some sense, and I think that's a good word to use. But I want to get maybe a little more specific. Britta, I know that you've been involved in sort of very specific urban scale prototypes. And I looked up something called the urban cleaner. And is that something that interests you? I mean, now are you looking to, using a tech-aided solution, a technology-aided solution for our cities in some sort of mode of improvement? Is that something that you want to talk about?
Yes, definitely. We are affected by air pollution, no? Especially, I mean, India is heavily affected by air pollution. So we designed an urban ambient air cleaning system called Aura, which I think that's the one you found online, which is 5.5 meters high. So this project is a symbiosis of performance-driven and aesthetics. Totally, we used computational technique and tools to come up with it, not only for the form, but also for the airflow. And also we use the computational tools to, reduce the number of molds, because also, like Pravinsinh said, it's about repetition. No? It's about a product which we want to implement in the city, and we need a lot of number for this. So it's also about multiplication and how we can cost effectively produce it. So this is one system which we are just building a prototype now, which we want to implement in the city, hopefully. I mean, we are now building a prototype on ourselves, but we contacted government and so on to see if we can.
That'd be nice. We'll look forward to that. So there's the sort of green aspect, and then I just want to sort of very quickly touch upon the social aspect. And to you, James, I know that you're involved in this initiative called Homed, if I've pronounced that right. And I think, you know, these are essentially sort of tech-enabled solutions. Again, you're working with the idea of recycling, you're working with the idea of, again, repetition and sort of sustainability and efficiency. Is that, you know, the idea of the pod? Are there other sort of prototyping ideas that you're using to address shortages? In this case, I assume, presumably, it's housing and comfort in that sense for maybe the homeless, as I understand it. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. You know, an idea of ours is to alleviate suffering for people, and architecture has that responsibility, and architecture, I think, has that capability. So humbly, I came up with a few ideas. One, of course, is to use concrete water pipe, and one is to use concrete box culverts to build housing. But I think specifically to the context of this particular conversation, which is about technology, I think on two levels, this project to deal with the social issues has now been enhanced by the capability of technology. One is, of course, the sharing of the design. So we license out the design, we help third parties be able to use this design in a local context. And that's done through the cloud, that's done through 3D models, that's done through, you know, online workshops, etc. All because of the ability for technology to link us all together. And then the other, I think the other very interesting aspect is, in fact, this kind of social cohesion through architecture, because this idea that I had has really gone viral around the world, and we've been approached by, you know, really a very diverse set of people from around the world to collaborate. And that could only have been done because of social media, through the news channels, etc. So I think architecture is, in fact, you know, touching on the social level and capably being, you know, spread at a very fast speed, and hopefully generate a very positive impact by the ability for technology to help us share design, share ideas, share intentions, and then for people to find out about it as well. So in the old days, we had to wait for an architectural magazine to, you know, publish your project, and then hopefully some people hear about it. But now, you know, a really kind of insightful project can get spread very quickly. So we're benefiting from both, and hopefully the result is a positive impact for society. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the idea of, in some sense, you're democratizing technology in that sense. I think by, again, you know, sort of sharing it, and then you said that it's a sort of licensing arrangement that you have with other takers, right, then deploy this across the city. And then Praveen, to you as well, you know, do you want to add something to this? I know you're on the Swachhata Pakhwada mission. Is there a sort of aspect of technology that you're using there maybe, or anything else that you're using currently that you really feel has, I know you spoke very briefly earlier on it creating greater access and communication, or aiding communication with the people that you work. And I think there's a sort of social angle in that in some sense. There's an idea of upliftment. And is there something that you want to talk about specifically in that area from a social aspect of you know, using technology? Sorry, Praveen, you're on mute.
Yeah. So generally, Swachhata Pakhwada, people talk about cleanliness. We have given this much of newspapers. We have said this much of paper. But what we have done at NID is we have got 125 tons of notes, demonetized, not demonetized, but your 500,000 rupees notes, or the currency. What we use in India is almost like 125 tons shredded a day. And what happens to this currency is it just goes for fire or for landfilling, right? So we created opportunity that what can be done, because if you see as a raw material, it is 2 rupees a kg. So you are getting a raw material which is so cheap. So we created plywood out of it, laminates out of it, because everybody wants money. And you want money on table, you want money on walls. So we created a lot of opportunities using this raw material. I think that is what people has to look into it. Not like Swachhta Pakhwada means you talk about we have clean our offices, my garden is clean. And that is what we started doing that. During this cyclone, we had like almost 72 trees were like, no, all fell down and all that. So we gave opportunity to students. Can you design something out of this? What is the value addition we can do in our own landscape? So it is an opportunity for students to create whatever coming to their head, and not like getting this wood like going for again cutting, because we know all the woods are not used for furniture, but at least for our own use or for students exploration, this becomes a very good source of material to be used. So my idea is looking into recycling, upcycling, and I'm the founder of Scrap Design Innovation. So whatever scrap you give, we convert into like not a jugaad, but like a usable product, which feels that it has come from a designer's showroom, but not like okay, it is a jugaad.
Yeah.
Every time we encourage students to come out with an idea from the reuse of material, keeping in mind that it do not become a jugaad, but it becomes like a finished product.
Right. Yeah. So I think a couple of things that I got out of that: money has no value, and you can make new money out of old money. Sounds like that. So in some way.
Yeah, we use like a lot of technology inside that, mixing it up, and a lot of entrepreneurs are there. So we got an opportunity from Ahmedabad airport. Why can't you create a huge aircraft Tata used for the first time in India, using the demonetized or the currency notes? So these are the things while using technology to create that aeroplane, the aerodynamic shape, because it has got 3D forms. So how do you create that 3D forms? So we have to create that 3D forms, then you have to make molds, and then we have to use this currency notes. So technology here, it becomes very important.
Right. Yeah. Now, I think, it's what's interesting about what you're saying is also the idea of materiality in these. You're talking about upcycling and recycling. What's sort of pivotal to that discussion is the way you're rethinking the use of material and sort of giving material new capacity using technology. And it's on this that I want to ask you, Sandeep. What is your belief on this? Do you really think that we talk and discuss enough about construction technology or technology for making in general in our country? Is there a sort of dearth of that in that discussion? Is that something that we sort of shy of? Is there an inertia? Are we sort of late adopters of technology? And are we now sort of trying to find I'm looking at two scenarios here. I'm thinking that maybe we have an opportunity to devise our own methods and our own material systems, considering the very unique context that we're in. We don't have to adopt from the West necessarily. We have our own inherent technologies, as Pravin's already working with some of those. And I sense a new opportunity, but I also see that, we're sort of hesitant. Is there something that, are we sort of generally assembling and making everything in fairly formulaic ways? Again, reference to what we're seeing outside of our country. Is there something that you want to talk about in that context?
Again, Sujit, this is a very brilliant question. See, you have to understand one thing. Our country is large. Our country has a different climatic zone, different culture, different lifestyle, different microclimate responses. So, and we have a megapolis, we have a metros, we have a tier 2 cities, we have so much of our countries yet in a rural areas. And we are going through that transitional mode now, where in another 10, 15, 20 years, we'll have 2.5 times of a built environment built in urban areas. So it is advantageous for us to look at the mistakes, as Naresh said, the dark side of technology, and look at us to see the brighter side of technology and adapt what we want. So yes, I do agree. We have been fairly slow in terms of adapting. And I think that is not due to any attitudinal issue, but that is due to issue of a scale. You imagine a particular developer or particular promoter who's in a tier 3 city. He doesn't find it is immediate need. So he's not really pushed to look at the technology for his adoption. But now all of this has accelerated in last 5 years. People have become very smart. People have become absolutely knowledge savvy, little bit thanks to pandemic. So many knowledge sharing webinars have happened, and so many worth exchange of thoughts and dialogues have happened. So I personally foresee it's a fantastic opportunity for the young minds, the new upcoming architectural practices, to have a proper look at all of these things that they have with them. And you'll find one of the finest and a brilliant architecture that will take birth in our country, because we are now going to do it, and we have the complete data, research, analysis. And as James said, as Britta said, all of the stalwarts are also eyeing on our country, and they are very passionate, aspire to come here and work for the affordable housing, for the city infrastructure, for the aviation projects, for the healthcare projects. So technology adoption has been slow, but it's no more a truth of today. It's been accelerated to its best, and the future is bright.
Yeah, I think you made one or two very important points, and I think it's that opportunity that I want to sort of narrow the discussion down very specifically to that opportunity with the way we think about materials in our country. And James, I want to ask you, because, and I think this question is very relevant for you specifically, because you're working both abroad and very specifically in our country. You've been working here for a long time, and maybe you're in a very good position to sort of take this on. Have you thought about maybe while working in India, revisiting sort of rudimentary material systems, where the way we conventionally think about materials or traditionally think about them, and then maybe adapting them to more complex and advanced project conditions? Because I know your projects have a certain level of complexity, and you're thinking in maybe fairly sort of, complex ways about geometries and protocols in projects. Or at the other side of this, just to play devil's advocate, do you really sort of prefer hybrid materials, new age tech on materials, improvised materials, alloys, and so on? Where are you on this?
So I'm interested in everything.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
I'm interested in everything because as an architect, I found that I've really enjoyed my journey of learning. So going anywhere in the world to work on a project is an opportunity and a need to learn. And part of that is, of course, to learn about the materiality of every single different place or culture. I have become much more, I think, recently become interested in traditional materials once again, because I think they embody certain wisdoms and certain characteristics, which I think has become, again, very pertinent in modern architecture. There are levels of sustainability that you can't do with substitute materials. You can only do with traditional materials. So, and I should look to Praveen for some advice, because right now in Hong Kong, we're doing a large auditorium where we've set ourselves a goal that all of the interior materials, including the furniture to the cladding, everything is going to be bamboo. And but we're trying to use some new mechanical ways and new ways of procuring this bamboo, such that in the whole supply chain, in the modern kind of Hong Kong, you can still get something that's quite sustainable. But equally, I'm really fascinated about new materials. So for example, the concrete water pipe housing that we are making is that we know that concrete has its limits in terms of its sustainability, but we've been working really hard and working with a bunch of very, very upcoming startup companies that do carbon embodied concrete. So low carbon concrete that actually we can actually inject the CO2 into the cement. Therefore, the carbon is then embodied into the concrete, making the concrete not just a structure for architecture, but also could become the storage of excess carbon in the world in general. So we hope that one day projects that, however humble, using concrete could start to become both beneficial in terms of structure and space, but also in terms of helping to reduce the amount of CO2 in the environment. So that needs to be involving very new cutting edge technologies that could mutate our current set of conventional materials into higher performing materials. But it's very expensive. It is still in the early days. And so it needs, I think, back to my original statement about being interested in everything, you just have to work with what you can get, right? You just have to get what you can afford, what you can get, and try to, result in a project that is hopefully quite positive in terms of impact and things like that. But I think that comes from both traditional and very new materials in duality. Yeah.
Yes, and I think because you said traditional, and and you're sort of trying to find the sort of right space between traditional and new age in that way, especially because you're working here, and I think you might sort of, I think, hop onto something interesting, and maybe there's a potential collaboration here, as you spoke about already. Pravin's here too, but Pravin, I wanted to ask you, how do you think technology is sort of impacted the traditional palette, specifically South Asian neighborhoods? Is there a way to find alternatives, in the way we consume, the way we design, the way we build? I know you're working a lot with bamboo, and you've kind of made it behave in unexpected ways. That's kind of devising a new meaning or a new opportunity for conventional material. Are there other things that I know you already touched upon a couple of projects? Is there something that's on the drawing board now that you're working with that is very sort of, there's the idea of technology and you're kind of making material perform in a different way, a conventional material?
So as James also talked about, the world is also getting smaller and smaller. So the furniture, traditionally what we used to make were very bulky, right? So now I tried working on furniture with collapses. So you may like beautiful furniture in India, but when you want to take it in US or somewhere else, the cost of furniture is less, but the cost of transportation is more. I think that we need to take care of that. How can we make our designs which are where tourists can spend more? You love it as a product or as a furniture, but when it comes to carry, it's a huge lamp, for an example, right? The lamp is nice, you are ready to pay for it. The weight is also not there, but the volume is there. So how do you tackle to this? This is what I think I have started looking into it. So I've started making collapsible furnitures, which collapses, right? So I teach also collapsibility, and when my every course, when I give a brief to my students, I also take the same brief. So that makes me alive, that designer. And their role of technology comes that how do you bend it, because bending in bamboo is very tough, correct? Then mass production, people don't think of, because everybody wants to be in tradition, but I feel that the tradition, the value of the past tradition and the potential for future has to be considered as a designer. And that is my role, is to create futuristic furniture where bamboo as a raw material, which we have plenty in India. At the same time, design also helps in environment, in the shipment part, carbon footprint, and everywhere. It is just not making, like, using bamboo means sustainability, right? But we need to, if the way we make it, packaging, the lightness, the finish. If you see the product, it's very, as in a lot of, I go to a lot of architect forum, people touch my furniture and they say, oh my God, is it bamboo? So, and perception of people is that bamboo is cheap, but not cheap in India because we don't produce in plenty. Correct. So, what I wanted to do was to change people perception that bamboo can be cheaper when we do mass production. But at this moment of time, it is expensive because we do in different pockets in India.
Right. No, I think that's very interesting, Pravin. And it would be, we should have another conversation on this, but it seems like we're going to run out of time. But before we kind of close and take questions, I think there's one aspect on this debate, or maybe not a debate, a conversation that I want to have is, the idea of maybe if technology is interfering with our sensibilities as designers. And Britta, I wanted to ask you, and maybe if you can quickly give me a response on this, since we're running out of time, sorry about that, is does technology have really an impact on the richness of our design outcomes, you think? Are we letting the computer decide for us? So is there a kind of, you think there's a kind of loss of connect with the end user? Or, is that something that doesn't, concern you as much, and you think that's not really the case?
I think technology does affect the way we think. Definitely. For us, it's more systematic. It forces us to think more in a systematic way.
Right.
Because systematic approach and systematic thinking, because we have to set parameters. So, but it's also, it does give us a greater control and freedom, as we can now model almost everything. But also we can rationalize it.
Right. Right.
And I mean, yeah, it pushes our thinking to be more systematic, as it's all about these parameters and constraints, but it gives us more freedom. So because we can easily iterate, we can do more options, we can evaluate.
Right. Yeah, no, I think I also want to ask Sandeep the same thing. Sandeep, do you think it's taking away the kind of human aspect in some sense? Are we kind of not being as discerning and scrupulous when we create projects and outcomes? Is there a sort of dilution in that sense when the computer is doing some level of thinking for us? And do you feel that way?
Well, my quick answer is no, because computer, if you use it judiciously, it will not take away anything from you. We spoke about the traditional materiality, but Sujit, our country is very rich with the traditional characteristics. We have a glare control Jali architecture, we have a courtyard planning, we have a evaporative cooling, we have a step wells. So these are all, if it is used properly, we call it as a contextual modernity. That's an approach, and technology is a tool. So technology cannot make you dependent or less important if it is used judiciously. Your characteristics is your mind and technology is your tool. Combine both together, you'll get the best.
Okay. And Praveen, do you think you'd be able to function if you had no tech at all to use, and you'd still be able to produce equally sort of stunning outcomes?
As Sandeep has rightly, it's just a tool, right?
Right.
So we have people who wants to make weaving. Weaving has to be done handcrafted nicely. It will come out very nice. That machine cannot do it. And we don't want our people to become handicapped because of machines. So it is just a tool. Wherever you're looking for mass production, you may use technology. Wherever you want hand skill, people will go towards hand skill, right? So it has to be a well balance of it.
Okay. And James, are you you want to pick one? Go into the wilderness with your sketchbook, or do you want to go into the space of the unknown? Read Metaverse.
Definitely Metaverse.
Okay.
But just very quickly though, you seem to have a go at the computer. Well, actually, not long ago when we were using this scale rule, this is a computer. This is actually a computer. It helped us scale and draw a straight line, right? We were doing that long time ago with a straight piece of wood, with a scale rule, and then with set squares. That's all technology and that's all computing. And we just now have our latest form of computing. And so why are we afraid of it? Why are we afraid of always use tools, right? So, and in fact, I also think that is a bigger question that came from your question, which is that why are people the only creatures that should be given the right to design? I mean, machines can also design and maybe design better than us, like especially in the medical world or in dangerous environments. So I think we should be positive, right? We should be positive about the future. So no,
I agree with you. Someone had to be the bad guy, so it's important that we ask the questions, I think, right? So
you're not the bad guy. We don't think you're the bad guy. Who thinks you're the bad guy? You're the best guy.
All right. Okay, that's terrific. No, I think on that note, I think I'd like to wrap it up. We're running out of time. I've been getting messages from Apurva. Thanks to all of you. I think it was really sort of insightful discussion. I really enjoyed it. And I think we'll take some questions now, Apurva.
Thanks a lot, speakers. It was really fun knowing all of those things. We have one question before we wrap up this session. The question is, by Vivek. India's culture is reflected in its human-centric buildings. The new trend is machine-centric, which has less human inputs and marks. Is that the right direction? This question is open to any one of you to answer.
I feel we have addressed this question. It's a very good question. If you use the technology and the machine availability to you in an appropriate manner, I don't think we are taking away anything from the traditional talent and artisan. You need to only know what to apply where. There is a coexistence, and that coexistence has to be respected, has to be nurtured, and has to be groomed. So machine in no way disrespecting the handicraft or the human talent that will always remain there. And I don't think, and that's also our responsibility. We have to revive that. We have to be very conscious, and there has to be a constant review of this particular thing. We don't want that old traditional art to die. But you'll find so many architects in India, they have been using this very judiciously. Like Anil said, his own house was done with the mud clay bricks, with the local stone. So it's not that those architecture and those kind of applications are dying. They're there for a purpose for which they are required for. And the technology is there for the purpose for it is required for. That's how the current stage is.
The suitability of technology, I think that's what
suitability of it. Absolutely, you said it.
Thank you for answering that. We have this one last question that we have received from our live chats. During I'm assuming this is from a student. During architecture course work, we have 2 to 3 years of hand drafting. Do you think, seeing the current speed of technological advancements, we should reduce it to 1 year of hand drafting and instead of add more softwares or digital oriented electives? This question is again open to anyone to answer.
James, that's for you.
I think drawing is something that we will have to practice and you have to learn. But whether it's drawing with a pencil, with a pen, with pixels on the screen, is still drawing. I am one for, ditching, learning only the techniques of the old, just to embody the culture. We have to be remembering that our creativity doesn't change just because we are necessarily drawing just with a pencil or we're drawing with software. So, I think the young people, you should remember that you're not necessarily abandoning your core values just because you're using high technology. You can be drawing jalis, you can be designing stepwells using virtual reality. And those stepwells and jalis will be the most beautiful that's ever been recreated within the Indian culture. So I would encourage schools to continue to teach drawing, but teach it with verve, teach it with a lot of new energy about the possibilities of what could be done with digital ink in a 3-dimensional metaverse compared to just, ink on mylar. So, that's my kind of take on it. If I could do it again, and actually, I want to be an architecture student again, by the way, whoever would take me, give me a place. I want to do it again because I think I will learn a lot of new things as well. Good luck to the students.
Praveen, I'd like you to step in and answer this. Praveen, you're from NID, Anil Bandwari here. I think you'll have a different point of view.
I will just tell you an example of one of my students, Medha Gupta. She is in Parsons now in USA, and she started making drawing on CorelDRAW. So I encourage her. See, important is that your idea should come into reality. That is more important. It doesn't matter you draw in AutoCAD or CorelDRAW. She was comfortable with CorelDRAW because she used to practice before graphics and all that. So I think we do not close them. Okay, you have to use only this and only this, because time will teach them. It is all about a time. So at this moment of time, she came out with CorelDRAW drawings. It was fantastic. There was no error. She did the production, and for me, it was nice. So I think it's about that energy, positive energy has to be there in making, not how you make it. Either you sketch, either you draw, or it's a charcoal. It's just a medium of expression.
Yeah, so but Praveen, in animation, now they're encouraging actually people to learn the art of creativity rather than just using software. It's the other way around. Sujit, you moderated brilliantly. I just wanted to get into this because I want to push the fact that you have to learn hand drafting and you have to concentrate on hand drafting.
Yes, ultimately, either you use vacuum or you do anything else. Either you use a paper or either you are on a sand. It is something hand is going to do it, right? So you may have technology, you may not have a light, and you are again helpless. So sketching is the best. If you know sketching and your mind is well synchronized with your hands, nothing like sketching.
Thanks, Praveen. And thanks, Praveen and James, for those inputs. In fact, our next session after lunch is education. So there are some pointers that we are going to take ahead from these conversations. But I must say that has been a complete discussion with so many relevant points that, touched upon. And Sujit, it was brilliantly moderated. So thank you all for your time.